Okay. Welcome, everyone. I am so excited that you are here with us today. I'm Lynn Hawkins, your host of the Health, Wisdom, and Wealth Show, and we are in powerful conversations for living your best life. Today's guest is Angie Nicolucci, and I am so excited that Angie is with us today because this is a conversation we haven't been in yet. And I tend to wonder how much importance people place on their sleep. So today's conversation, healthy sleep, healthy home, and life, your ticket to living a longer, healthier life. Welcome, Angie.
Hi, welcome, or thank you. Lynn, it's so great to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation. And I'm so thrilled to talk about the importance of sleep. It is so important.
It really is. And before we get started, I want our audience to know just a little bit about you. So let me share that Angie is a certified sleep science coach. She has, as part of her background, an environmental health consultant, an electromagnetic radiation consultant, and she's a trained functional nutritionist who, after 23 years working for Fortune 100 healthcare companies, decided to stop the madness and pursue her dream of helping people through sleep and circadian wellness. And she's going to be sharing her wisdom with us today. And I'm just once again so very excited to have you on the show.
Well, thank you. And I'm just thrilled to be here. And, sleep is one of those critical pillars to our health and well-being. And so I'm just honored to be speaking about it with you and everyone that's able to join us.
Well, thank you. And we're just going to get right into it because this is something that is so important to people. And honestly, I don't think most people really realize the value of conscious sleep and choosing consciously around your sleep. So, Angie, tell us a little more about you and your journey to focus on sleep and circadian wellness.
Absolutely. Well, as you mentioned in my introduction, having over 2 decades working in a fast-paced corporate environment. And what I know about my past self was that I showed up as a go-getter. I showed up as a pleaser. I showed up as somebody that wanted to bring results to the organization. I had my whole heart in it, etc. The trade-off, Lynn, was I wasn't taking care of myself. And when I think about myself, other women and men, even out in the corporate world, that self-care oftentimes gets put on the back burner and it's traded for some definition of success. And so for me personally, I was like, wow, I'm not taking care of myself. I felt older than I was age-wise, but like my body felt older. I didn't look the way I felt I should be looking. I didn't feel the way I felt I should be feeling. And I had an opportunity to take a short sabbatical for about 2 or 3 months. And I focused on my sleep. I lost like 10 pounds. It was amazing. Just really focusing on me and bringing myself back to taking care of myself first so that I could then help take care of others. And so when I had an opportunity to transition out of corporate, I knew in my heart and soul that I wanted to help people with their health. And so as I worked, with my coaches and worked with my different trainings and skills and certifications, I fell in love with sleep because I realized that it is such an important yet undervalued piece of our health. And And so I'm in love with sleep. I do it every night. Hopefully everyone watching is too. And yeah, so that's a bit about my journey of really looking at what can I do to help myself show up better, help myself live in vibrancy and vitality, and then just really wanting to be of service. So helping others learn how to sleep again as well.
That is so important, in today's environment between working at home, possibly working at home and working at the office, or working at the office, masked up all day, and then coming home and you've got family obligations, you've got, whatever your workouts, or, maybe you're trying to launch that new business and you're doing all of these things. And a lot of people, you said it, people sacrifice their sleep in order to do other things. I look at it, after what I've learned, as it being a fallacy. It's not really true that when you sacrifice your sleep, you're gaining something on the other side, because there's things that come into play, like focus and cognitive alertness. And tell us a little bit about some of the things that you've observed when people do sacrifice their sleep for something else.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's so many interesting statistics and data out there about the consequences of poor sleep, whether it's like one of my favorite numbers is that there's an estimated US economic loss of $411 billion per year due to poor sleep. And how does that show up? It shows up just like you said, people that are in brain fog, or they're late, or they're not as productive as they might be. They're not showing up as their best selves every day. And then that can have that ripple effect from an economic standpoint, from a business standpoint, but even just as how it shows up, in ourselves. It can show we're all connected, right? We've got our mind, our emotions, our spirit, our physical bodies. And when one piece of that is off, it can have that same ripple effect of like, oh, I don't feel right today, or I don't have that quality of self-esteem, or maybe I'm feeling anxiety, or I'm just not sleeping. And so I'm the late one, I'm the slow one, I'm the one that's not getting it. That's oftentimes how people can show up when they have a poor night's sleep. So embracing it and bringing it back into a part of that healthy self-care routine is really critical. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And, I wonder, you mentioned some of the things, showing up late. People generally wouldn't equate that to the fact that they haven't had sleep, and it doesn't necessarily mean that that is how you operate in the morning. So you jumped out of bed, you're late, and you've actually brought in another level of stress. And, do you look at the effects of stress as it relates to lack of sleep? And what are some of the things that you see in that regard?
Yeah. So stress is such an interesting concept because, again, it can show up from a variety of sources. We have a hormone in our body called cortisol, and that is a stress hormone. It's our fight or flight hormone. It's what helps us survive and thrive throughout the day. And, when we're in alignment in our self-care, that naturally goes down at night. So we start to bring it down, whether it's, but when I have clients that have difficulty disconnecting from their day, if they have environmental factors that might be stimulating them, like if they're on a computer or a cell phone late at night, and we can talk a little bit more about why that triggers cortisol, but all of these factors contribute to stress, and then it's hard to fall asleep at night because that stress is still going. And then it can get into this perpetuating cycle, because let's say somebody is having a hard time turning off that stress hormone at night, and they're laying in bed for an hour or two, or they're waking up in the middle of the night and laying in bed for a couple of hours, then getting up in the morning and not feeling refreshed, there's that stress hormone is activated again, right? It's activated through either I'm late, or through self-judgment, or just rushing around trying to do everything at once. I mean, that kind of gets into this self-perpetuating cycle. So stress management is huge when it comes to sleep. And, Velin, we get to look at all of the factors. So when I say stress, we can look at, well, what are the sources of stress that come into somebody's life that's affecting their sleep? Is it their family or home life? Is it their work life? Is it their exercise, their diet routine? Or is it their environment? Stress can come into us from different environmental factors, like inappropriate lighting after night, like I mentioned, the cell phones and the laptops. Stress could be from air quality. It could be from electronics in our environment. And the body's just trying to deal with it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, so it's really hard for me to tease apart, because it's all related. It's all related, and it can show up in so many different ways. And when I work with my clients, Velin, it's important for me to make sure that they know, like, you are showing up as an individual. You deserve to be heard, you deserve to be thought of, and we get to unravel all of this together, because your situation is unique. You're not your neighbor, you're not your husband, you are you. And what might be causing this person poor sleep isn't necessarily what's going to cause somebody else to have poor sleep or heal their sleep. So we get to look at all of that very uniquely and specifically for every single person.
Well, I love that. Brings to mind a term that I learned not too very long ago called Bio-Individuality. And, I initially learned it in the context of food, and the fact that, when, especially as a whole food, plant-based lifestyle advocate like I am, I'm always looking to introduce this into the conversation somewhere. And one of the things that came increasingly clear to me was that, different foods work differently for everyone.
Mm-hmm.
And really looking at even the fact, knowing that green leafy vegetables are so good for everyone, there may be some that work better for some people, and some that some people should probably avoid, at least, especially when the body is going through changes and adaptations. And what I hear you saying is that that is the same case as it relates to not only the stressors that are out in our environment, but the things that we create for ourselves as well. We create them in ways that are unique to ourselves, and therefore solutions have to be unique for ourselves as well.
Mm-hmm.
That's really awesome. And then, let's jump into the circadian rhythm aspect. And I think that, as I've heard and learned about circadian rhythms, I've heard and learned about it more from the perspective of women. Tell us a little more about the circadian rhythms, and is it something that impacts women more than men?
That's a really fascinating question. The circadian rhythm is inherent to life on the planet. Plants, insects, humans, men and women, we all have a circadian rhythm. And in fact, our circadian rhythm, what I love about the circadian rhythm is that, oftentimes people think, oh, the sun sets and the sun rises and it gets dark and it gets light and it's 24 hours in a day. And that's the circadian rhythm, right? And what I think is so cool about the circadian rhythm is that all of our cells have their own circadian rhythm. So it's not a matter of night versus day, sun versus moon. It's this whole beautiful orchestra of cellular actions and hormones and neurotransmitters and all these cool things that happen in our body in this beautiful cycle that happens around a day, which is circadian, means around a day. So it's about this 24-ish hour cycle that our body just is in this beautiful flow. And what's so interesting about this is about, 175 years ago, let's just say that, we didn't have artificial light in our homes. We had firelight, we had candlelight, we had maybe a gas light here and there, but all of it was this natural, beautiful, warm red flame. And as electricity got, electricity is great. I mean, obviously we're doing what we're doing right now because we've got electricity. So, but, as this got introduced into our lifestyle, it increased people's productivity. It increased their ability to socialize more. It sparked more and more of the Industrial Revolution, if you will. Like, people were really being more productive. But what we now know is that this blue and green light doesn't exist after sunset. And so when we think about the way our eyes and the way our skin interact with these light cues from natural light, that light is a messenger. That light is food for the body and the cells, giving us guidance on, okay, the light's changing now, so now it's time to do this, right? The sun has set, the light is getting red and darker, and so now it's time for us to transform that sunlight that we got into our bodies and mix it with the food that we've had and produce melatonin, and then release the melatonin, and then the melatonin helps us fall asleep. But when we have that light in our environment after sunset, the body is reading it as daylight. So that cortisol we were talking about earlier, that's still being produced. The melatonin that helps us fall asleep is a hormone, and that's not being produced because it's not time, right? The body thinks it's not time. So the circadian rhythm, yes, it is the 24-hour a day. And there's so many cool things we can talk about how to make that, reset our circadian rhythms and get them healthy again. But it's a bigger understanding of these are light cues that are giving our body instructions on what they need to do to live in optimal health and wellness.
Fascinating, fascinating. And maybe you can speak to this a little more too. Is this a reason that people react in the seasons a little differently as well? When the days are longer, when the sun is up earlier and goes down later, people tend to have more fluidity in life, so to speak. Is that the case?
That's my understanding and experience. And so let's transition that into somebody that's sitting in an office all day and they're not getting outside and getting exposure to the natural light. Even on a cloudy day, the light, it's still light outside. They're just exposed to this artificial light. And so their body isn't necessarily getting that food, light as food, if you will, to help support them. So what's really cool, when you were talking about functional nutrition earlier, there are foods, well, there's an essential amino acid called tryptophan. We've all heard of it, about, associated with the turkey dinner, that post Thanksgiving food coma, if you will. But tryptophan is actually it's an essential amino acid. It's something that the body doesn't make on its own. It's something we need to get through a healthy diet. Well, when we have tryptophan in our system and we go out into natural sunlight, it is converted into something called serotonin. And serotonin is that feel-good, happy, anti-anxiety, joyful hormone that helps us feel really great. And then guess what is made from serotonin? It's melatonin. And what triggers that transition is, again, the light. So now that light from the day when it's really bright, then starts to shift into that red light, that darkness, then the body's like, oh, now we get to make melatonin to support the body in falling asleep. So the getting those light cues are just so important.
Oh my gosh, that's great.
Yeah.
And to our audience, this is one of the reasons that we are doing this show, that guests like Angie are coming to us to share this information because, there's so many things that we may have misconceptions about. And if not a misconception, we have no information about. And if, there is some information, we want this information to validate what it is that you do know that really brings about healthy living. And it does it in a way that allows you the opportunity to share what you know with others. We know that there are more than 7 billion people on the planet, and at last count, nearly half of our global population is ill, suffering from something. And it really is about education, finding out what it is that you need, putting your oxygen mask on first so that you can then help someone else. And as we're bringing this information to you, we want you to take notes, find us on the internet, and find out more information. We're going to tell you a little later how you might be able to connect with Angie. But I want Angie, this is something that has come, and I want to bring this up because there's controversy in the realm of mental health. What promotes a healthy mental state, what diminishes a healthy mental state. And we've talked about some things, the blue lights, the electronics that actually give off, even minor forms of radiation really do have an impact on us. And what I want to know is how sleep can counterbalance and promote mental wellness. Can you speak to that for us?
Absolutely. The most beautiful thing about sleep is that it's actually a very active process. So most people think like, oh, you sleep, you lay the body down, check out for hopefully 8 hours and then come back. But the body goes through a healing process. It goes through skin regeneration of our outer and our inner skin. All these different neurotransmitters kind of wash through us and clean house from our day. And the brain specifically goes through this washing at night. It's something called the glymphatic system, where all the kind of protein wastes from just thinking hard and doing all we do all day get cleaned up and washed out, right? And so when we allow ourselves the opportunity to get, 7 to 9 hours of sleep every night, it allows the brain to cleanse itself, and we can excrete all of that to arrive fresh the next day. So when we're not getting enough sleep every night, that can show up in mental health. It can show up, mental health. I'm so glad that you brought that up because, in some conversations in our society, it's taboo and we're not allowed to talk about it, but it is a pillar of health. And so whereas poor sleep may show up as type 2 diabetes in one person or chronic fatigue in another, it can show up as anxiety and depression in the third person. And I've worked with clients that have struggled with their anxiety and their depression. And one woman in particular, it turned out that she was really, really sensitive to light. So we did a lot of light management in her environment, supported her in adopting some glasses to wear that help block the light frequencies at night. And she's feeling so much better, right? Because she's getting that sleep that she needs, that she's getting that sleep that's helping her just cleanse. The anxiety's going down. There's more joy and productivity and vitality the next day for her, you know, and that's something that happens again and again and again. You know, I'll throw out there, this is a really interesting thing to think about. Humans are the only, I'll call us animal, if you don't mind. Humans are the only animal that willingly choose not to go to sleep when they're tired.
Wow.
So if you think about a pet like a dog or a cat, they're tired, they're just hanging out, taking a nap. They don't care, you know? But, you know, myself included, I can think about so many days and nights where I felt like, oh, I'm so tired, but I've got my, you know, to-do list that I need to conquer so I can actually go to bed at night. Well, so then this is where the mental health comes in even more. So not only am I making a conscious choice not to fall asleep and take care of myself, but I'm putting that extra added pressure on myself to stay awake. And then maybe I don't get through that to-do list. And then part of my subconscious is tied up in the, oh, I forgot to do this. And oh, tomorrow is going to be so stressful. And oh, I've got all this, you know, stuff in the world that I need to manage. Well, that's not a great way to promote our own mental health and well-being either, because then we get into that self-judgment and you know, sleep, being able to manage that in order to go to sleep is also something that I work with clients on, because it's so important. We've got to address it from all angles. You know, one thing I don't know that I shared with you, but I'm a spiritual psychologist trained through the University of Santa Monica's programs, and it's all connected, right? So being able to support people with their mental health through sleep it's critical. It's just a critical part of it. Yeah.
It really is. And I love that you brought that in, because as I'm looking at the little blurb that you put behind you, if you love someone, let them sleep. That is so key. You know, we look at sometimes self-love, other people's perception of our own self-love as being selfish. This totally turns the table. You know, if you love someone, let them sleep. Well, encourage them to sleep as well. Because a lot of times, you know, we'll be out, you know, others don't see what's happening in our own environments. And if we're living with someone who's having difficulty in sleeping, we know that there is a ripple effect that will occur. And thank you for sharing all of that, because you've expressed it. It can show up in so many different ways. But right now, let me ask you this. Can sleep, or the lack of sleep, really make you gain weight or lose weight?
Well, yes, it can. And I've touched on a little bit of this. And if I may, I'll just expand a bit more.
Please. Yeah.
Yeah, so I've talked a little bit about the hormone cortisol, and we have a couple other hormones that are also tied to our light. And the two I'd like to talk about, one is called ghrelin, and the other one is called leptin. And ghrelin is our hunger hormone, and leptin is a hormone that helps with satiety, right? So that feeling of being satisfied. And so what we know is that when we stay up later at night and we're exposed to the blue and green light from artificial sources, not only is cortisol triggered, but the body still thinks we're awake and we need to be active. So in order to be awake and active, guess what the body needs? The body needs food, right? And so what happens, this hormone called ghrelin starts to increase, creating this feeling of hunger. So as you know, as someone might be sitting there enjoying Netflix or whatever they're doing at night, and they get those munchies, they probably don't tie it into the fact that the light in their environment is triggering their hunger hormone. Now, the flip side of that is it also lowers the satiety hormone. And so not only now are we exposed to this light that is tricking us into thinking it's daytime, we're hungry and we can't get satisfied. So what do? We eat. Okay. Now, to add on to this, we spoke a bit earlier about the circadian rhythm, and light isn't always the only cue. Temperature is another cue that helps us with our circadian health. And as we prepare for sleep at night, the core of the body, so, neck to navel, if you will, it wants to drop by about 2 to 3 degrees. It's cooling itself. The blood is kind of leaving because there's other things, there's other jobs it needs to do. Well, when we eat late at night, it resets that. The blood flow goes into that core area because now it has work to do. It has to digest all of that food that we've just consumed. And so then when we go to bed at night, instead of doing all that cleansing and regeneration that we're supposed to be doing at night, we can't, because everything's focused on digesting the food. And so now you can see where maybe that aging or that oxidative stress component comes in, because things are shifted, right? We haven't allowed the body to cool, to be complete with digestion before we go to bed. And so the body's not doing what it thinks it should be doing, if that makes any sense. So now, and then we get up and we feel hungry or tired when we eat. And so then we eat more, and then it just gets into this cycle, right? So poor sleep or not going to sleep can trigger, the eating, the late night eating, and then the body doesn't have the time to process what has been consumed before the next day. And so the cycle continues.
That is so great to know. Again, we're figuring, we're living life, we're just doing, and not necessarily with thoughts of not caring, but it's hard to do what we need from a physical, mental, spiritual standpoint when we don't really understand the behind the scenes kind of stuff, as I would call it. As a digital marketer, I'm doing a lot of stuff behind the scenes. And so this is really key in connecting a lot of the dots. And so once again, many of our conversations on the show kind of get into the subject of using food as medicine. And I love using light as medicine. I'm going to have to add that in some way, shape, or form to a lot of this stuff. But, as I have learned, there are a lot, but not a lot. It's like that simple, but not easy. There's some things that you want to do to create the healthiest of lifestyles. And we all have heard of the exercising, although I think we've been taught about exercising wrong, or just not the correct way for our bodies at any given point in time, because you can't do at age 50 what you used to do at age 10. And we don't necessarily learn that there are differences in those spaces. And the same thing with eating. A lot of people think, oh, I'm eating the same things that I ate when I was growing up, and I learned how to cook this way. It's the only way I know how to cook this. Yet as our bodies change, because we are evolving, right? We're evolving as we're getting older. There are things that we need to shift in order to keep our bodies at that optimal state of health. And I know that, as youngsters, we looked at sleep and we were able to say, I don't need 8 hours of sleep at this point in time, but I can sleep over the weekend or whatever. And I know as adults, a lot of us do that. We're working our business. And, many of the big gurus have said, you need to work 90 hours a week and, sacrifice whatever you need to sacrifice, even if it's just for the short term. And I've learned that that is more cliche than reality. Now, don't get me wrong, you do have to work hard, but it's more about working smart. It's more about how can I utilize a team? How can I, do things differently that really don't have me working 90 hours a week. And then looking at food, so exercise, food, sleep, alcohol consumption, those things that could be very impactful to what we do to live a healthy life. I like to look into the lives of our guests and kind of find out, what is your sleep regimen? Do you go to bed at 9 and get up at 6, or how do you do that? And does it change seasonally?
That's a great question. So I think what we're talking about is it's a combination of two things: sleep hygiene and sleep ritual. And you mentioned even food and the importance of foods and all of that. So if I'm to look specifically at what I would call my sleep ritual, so much of it starts at the beginning of the day, if you will, because I want to make sure that I'm eating the right types of foods that are really going to set me up for success during the day. And so that includes healthy, plant-based, Mediterranean type diets. One thing to really honor and acknowledge about ourselves is that our gut microbiome has, I think, 400
Brilliant.
times the number of little creatures in there than we have cells in our actual body. I mean, it's amazing. And then we have our brains, and then we have this beautiful nerve that runs from brain to gut called the gut brain axis. And it's this nerve called the vagus nerve. And it's like the information superhighway between what's going on in our gut and what's going on up here, which then runs everything else. So it's like starting with that really healthy, well-balanced food to give me that energy, that then we get to marry it with that light called medicine, or medicine called light that you had said. And then as the day progresses, my personal sleep hygiene is that I do try to discontinue eating about 3 to 4 hours before bed, for that reason we talked about earlier, about the core temperature of the body starting to decrease. One of my little tips is after dinner, when I'm at home, because at some point we're all going to be out in the world again doing doing dinner with friends and traveling and whatnot. But at this point, when I'm finished with dinner, I'll go and do my evening self-care of brushing my teeth and doing my oral care, because that helps prevent me from that snacking, right? That we had talked about also can cause to, so it's just a habit I've gotten in, that like, how can I make it easy? That's the thing, is like, we get to make things easy. How can I set myself up for success? So I finish my meal, I go and I do my oral care. If I have time, I do like to shower before I go to bed, or at least take a bath or something like that, just to get the day off. I mean, not only the physical day from any like allergens, pollens, or pets that I may have cuddled with, but just the energetic of the day. We've talked about stress during this conversation, and there's like a baptism or a cleansing that happens in the shower, psychologically, just to rinse off that day. And it also supports the body in cooling its temperature, because when we get out of that warm bath or shower, the air is cooler and it just is going to pull the heat away. So I do that. And then I can show you, we talked a lot about light management. So I wear these. I put them on at night, I look really cool. But they block the green and the red light. So I get to enjoy that television show, you know, with my husband, or have a lamp on and read a book or whatnot. But that's the way I chose to do it, because I enjoy technology. I do have low lighting at night in my home, but these have been a wonderful, wonderful addition to my regimen. And then right before I go to sleep, I do something called Bedtime Intentions. And it's a really beautiful spiritual practice of where I get to review my day. How did things go? In the course of this process, I parking lot anything that is on my mind, because I don't want that piece of my subconscious tied up in an incomplete, right? So here's the journal.
What's the loop?
Yeah, you just write it out. Like, it can be done tomorrow or whenever, but it doesn't need to occupy my space at night, because at night is so important for self-care of the actual body doing what it needs to do. So I parking like that stuff. I think about like, what are answers to questions that I might need? And can I just ask or pray that come in the dream state? Or that it shows up for me in a way that I recognize and I understand. And so then we can get up the next day and the answers are there. There's really cool stories about people who have done this. Like, for example, the periodic table of elements, if for anyone that's taken a chemistry class, that came to that scientist in a dream. It's so fascinating. So it's just a very powerful way to close the day, to go to bed with God, really, at night, to go to bed with spirit, and lay the body down. Like, it just feels really complete. And then, wow, I go to sleep, I'm out, and then my brain is cleansing and washing all that stuff out into the lymphatic system, and my inner and outer skin is regenerating. The liver regenerates between 11 p.m. and 3 a.m. in the morning. I mean, there's so many cool things that happen when we allow ourselves that window of sleep. So that's my sleep ritual. You know, just in a nutshell, it's like healthy food throughout the day, healthy sunlight throughout the day, doing a oral care right after the meal, and taking a shower, using my blue light blocking glasses that I have, and then doing that kind of end of day review or bedtime intention setting.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And so what is your favorite meal? Your favorite dish, I should say.
Oh my gosh. I love Thai green curry. That is my favorite meal on the planet. Just the that delicious coconut milk and all the vegetables, and the spice. I do enjoy spice, so that has to be my favorite meal. Thank you for asking.
Awesome. Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You know, I really appreciate you being here to share and to kind of let us in to see who Angie really is with the sleep regimen, ritual, and routine, and your favorite meal. So, as we're bringing our conversation to a close, Angie, is there some wisdom that you believe is important to share in this time, something that you want to have or make a positive impact on our audience?
Well, I'll share with everybody that when we know differently, we do differently. And it's not about better or worse, it's just different. So, practicing self compassion and self forgiveness, that we're really all doing the best that we know how. And when we know differently, we do differently. And so, for anyone out there that's struggling with their sleep or has a lot of stress or anxiety, just know you're doing the best that you know how to do at this time, and that there's so much opportunity to learn new things and try things out and see what works and start to do differently. And just be really self-compassionate with yourself and with others too, because we can say that for ourselves, and then we get to apply that to all the people that we work with and live with during the day.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was beautiful. And yes, to our audience, give yourself the gift of sleep and self-compassion and compassion towards others as well. You know, when you were saying that, it made me think about, having something occur during the day, and you ask the question, well, was that me? Did I cause that? And we just never know what's going on in someone else's life. And being able to now add sleep to the list of potential reasons or lack thereof, maybe that allows you to be a little more compassionate. But however it goes, be more cognizant of the fact that you want to have 7 to 8 to 9 hours of sleep a night, and give yourself that gift, because there's so many more rewards on the other side of it. And if you like this conversation, please let us know. At the bottom of this video, you'll see the comment section. Write us a comment, and also you can let us know if there are any subject matters that you'd like for us to consider bringing on to the show, because we appreciate you. Our goal is to get this information to you, and we want to know what it is that you'd like to hear about. And if you're a health wisdom or wealth practitioner and you'd like to share your knowledge and expertise with our audience to be in this conversation, reach out to me, PM me, message me on Facebook, Instagram, LinkedIn, or email me at Velan@p3academy.com, and let's connect. So, okay, everyone, we've got some exciting things coming up in future episodes, so do stay tuned. We're here every Tuesday, 2:22 p.m. Eastern Time. Turn on your notifications and be a part of it all. And please do us the favor of sharing with someone else. Help us get the message out. Be well. Angie, thank you so much for being here today. Remember, live, love, and be a bigger positive impact maker in the world, because you can. So everyone, bye for now, and we will see you next time.